And we're live. We're live, guys. Welcome to another episode of Good Morning Liberty here at the 10th Amendment Center. We are streaming live. My name is Michael Boldin. Thank you so much for watching. This is the end of our second week of doing this beta run, this test run, hoping to see if you enjoy a kind of an almost daily update. We're broadcasting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on YouTube and then sharing it later on over on Twitter and Facebook, plus also on blog.10thamendmentcenter.com on those days. It is 9:30 a.m. Pacific time here in downtown Los Angeles on Friday. This is the 10th, August 10th, 2018. So good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be tuning in. Thank you so much for being here with me. I do want to thank you for spending some time with me. Of course, make sure to smash the likes if you want to help us spread the word, because hitting that like button definitely tells YouTube to show the video, whether live or in archive, to some other people. And I want to thank a lot of people who have been sending us feedback to team@10thamendmentcenter.com as well. We really appreciate your thoughts on what we're doing and what you think we should cover. So today, I'm just going to cover two main topics. And the first one is that the drone warrior, Barack Obama, just got awarded, or he's going to be getting, I don't know when he receives the award, another Human Rights Award, which I think is just absurd, the whole idea of him. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. And then this might become either a weekly or a bi-weekly thing. I want to respond, at least talk, maybe a little trash about some of the dumbest comments, some of the most uninformed comments that I've seen recently in response to some things that we post. Because a lot of people tend to have really strong opinions about things in politics that they don't know much about. So I don't know why they tend to be the most vocal, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. Again, smash the likes, leave some comments, and thank you so much for being here with me. Let's get over to our first topic. And I was alerted to it through this tweet from WikiLeaks just the other day. And it says, Obama, who expanded drone kills 10 times, oversaw the destruction of Libya, Syria, Yemen, the creation of ISIS and the African refugee crisis, and who prosecuted more whistleblowers using the Espionage Act than all previous presidents combined, receives Human Rights Award. I'm like, man, that's some bomb-throwing, kind of over-the-top fake news, isn't it? So, of course, I investigated it. I decided to read for myself. I happen to like WikiLeaks. I know people love or hate them depending on the year or who's in power and who they're exposing, but I happen to like them. Does that make me a Russian agent these days? I don't know. Back when Obama was in office, it would have made me, I don't know, some kind of bad person. It always is bad. So I went and I looked at the official notification from the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Association, rfkhumanrights.org, and you can see this here. Laureates were selected for their exceptional work toward a more just and peaceful world. A peaceful world. So the Hope and Change candidate, Barack Obama, we used to laugh, or at least I did, about these bumper stickers I'd see all the time where it had Obama, and it was just Obama, or the O, and it had a peace sign in the letter O. And I thought, man, this is absurd. There's no way this guy is a peace guy. And even had a conversation, a couple episodes I talked about this. A couple episodes ago I talked about it, where I ran into a neighbor years ago who was all excited about it. And I said to her, look, I'm anti-war. I can't be in favor of this guy. And she was just perplexed. She couldn't understand. Well, the numbers have definitely shown that, well, she was ignorant. And this idea that Obama was a peaceful candidate is just nonsense. We can start out with the number of bombs he dropped. We did a video here on YouTube a few weeks ago. It wasn't a live one, but we did a video that talked about the number of bombs that have been getting dropped in recent presidencies, including Trump. And George Bush, with his full-scale invasion of Iraq dropped a total of 70,000 bombs. Now, this comes from U.S. Air Force Central Command statistics. 70,000 bombs through the Bush administration. And the so-called peace president, who's getting this RFK Human Rights Award for making a more peaceful world, dropped 100,000 bombs, more than Bush. So all the so-called anti-war activists who couldn't stand Bush, like me, I absolutely couldn't stand Bush. Why weren't they also in the streets by the tens of thousands when Obama was slaughtering people overseas, engaging in unconstitutional wars, dropping more bombs by almost 50% than George Bush did, the so-called worst since Adolf Hitler is what we would see. I was out there in the streets protesting the Bush administration's wars with the socialist left, the commies. That was a majority of the people who were organizing those events. We would get 10,000, 15,000 people at these events in Hollywood or here in downtown LA. It was a little bit less at the time. And there were tons of people. But once the changeover went from Bush to Obama, those numbers dwindled to almost nothing. And I remember my good friend Nick Hankoff, who used to work with me for a number of years. He now works at RT America, Russian Troll, of course. I think with the Jesse Ventura show. So Nick had been organizing a lot of End the Fed and Stop the Wars protests with libertarians for a number of years. And he went to the head, this guy, I think his name is Michael, of the Answer Coalition, which is full communist. And they were organizing these anti-war, more healthcare type of things, more spending domestically, stop wars to get more spending domestically, but not really on the principle of just stopping the war. So Nick went to him and he said, you know, since Obama came in, and I'm paraphrasing, I only heard this from Nick, but since Obama came in, our protest numbers have gone to almost nothing. Each of us were getting like 20, 30 people. At its peak, it was 10,000, 15,000 people in the streets. Anyone who was alive during that time can certainly remember the protests around the world against the war in Iraq. And so he said, look, why don't we work together and I will set aside the End the Fed and you set aside the pro-nationalized healthcare and we'll just do a protest against the illegal, immoral wars. And of course, the Answer Coalition guy says, absolutely not, no way. And the way it was described to me was basically like, if you want to be anti-war, you got to come through me. In other words, they don't want people to be together in coalition, which is very unfortunate. Justin Bayola, thanks for tuning in again, man. I really, really appreciate it. He says, dropped so many bombs, he ran out. I actually heard something like that. They were actually running low. They had to worry about manufacturing it was just a crazy thing, the amount. He also did not agree with the Iraq war, but did my job. And I think a lot of people in the military were in the same position. I know during the Ron Paul campaigns, he was getting more donations from active duty military members than any other candidate, even though he was registering so low in the polls. So I think they recognize who recognizes the horrors of war more than anybody. I think the people who are engaged in it. So it's absolutely absurd that Obama would get another human. I mean, first of all, it was absurd. It forever stains the Nobel Peace Prize that he was actually given the Peace Prize. But this Human Rights Award, not only are they talking about a more just and peaceful world, I mean, this guy also, if you want to talk about a just world, a peaceful world, let's talk about domestically as well. A lot of people are under the false assumption, and I know the propaganda is strong, under the false assumption that Barack Obama backed off on marijuana enforcement. And states were only able to get away with it because Obama was a pot smoker. And this is an absolute lie. And the amount of money that Obama spent on enforcement measures and the number of enforcement measures that he did in just his first term was more than the total of what George Bush and Bill Clinton did in 3 terms combined. So Obama Not only was he bad on foreign wars, he was the worst in history in the domestic war that is the war on drugs that has destroyed so many lives. And if you want to talk about how it has affected minority populations, people of color here in the United States, the drug war has decimated many of those communities. And Obama was absolutely terrible. I just want to cover one more thing on this. He says, Bobby Kennedy was one of my heroes, said President Obama. I first got into public service because I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, believing that my own salvation was bound up with the salvation of others. Right, the salvation of the people that you sent to heaven. That's something expressed far ever than I ever could. And, I mean, it's just a bunch of propaganda nonsense. He says, I'm just determined to help inspire and cultivate this over the rest of my career. The idea that anybody can be one of the millions of acts of conscience and voices raised against injustice. The idea that anybody can be one of the million different centers of energy and daring who, like Bobby Kennedy, have always changed the world for the better. I don't think it's possible. I mean, the words are very good. They're powerful words. They sound good. They feel good. But Obama was terrible. Oh, Woodsider has a great comment on here. When you don't... Man, this is awesome. When you don't have an underlying philosophy, you're more than willing to overlook the atrocities your team does, even though you oppose it when the other team does the same thing. And that's why I think the philosophy of liberty, and for those of us who take the Constitution seriously and liberty, that's the line in the sand. So you follow that, and for me, I push activism for the Constitution because it is a tool that allows people locally to advance liberty. The goal is individual liberty. So if you have that foundation, it doesn't matter what one side or the other side is doing. And this is what we see. Pro-surveillance people become anti-surveillance depending on who's in office. I'm surprised we haven't seen the left go anti-gun control yet. But in a way, it's interesting. The first day, just one quick aside on that, the day after Trump won the election, a very hardcore Democrat, I would say he's more progressive than standard Democrat. He's more towards Green Party end of things. A Bernie Sanders kind of guy, more of a socialist in many of his thinking, but not fully. But who voted for Hillary because even though he didn't like it, we had talked about her many times. But he calls me up, maybe it was the day after, it may have been 2 days after, but he's like, hey, Boldin, you want to hit the gun range? I think it's important for us to kind of practice up. And it's really interesting because that is a perspective that people should have no matter what side of the political coin you're on. The politicians are dangerous, and when you have a guy, your team in charge, you can't trust that the next guy isn't going to try to oppress what you feel is right. And so that was very interesting. Maybe more people will think like that. I want to give some kudos out to my buddy Jarrett, who, while we wouldn't agree on a lot of policies, he's a very, very honest conversationalist when it comes to what he thinks is right and wrong. So I love people all across the political spectrum who are honest, who hold to a philosophy. There just are, unfortunately, in this team politics, this Republican versus Democrat, there are so few. And that's why one of the most popular pieces of social media that we share, as much as we can, is that we have videos, memes, sometimes articles. It basically just goes less Democrat, less Republican, more Constitution. So again, thank you guys for sharing those thoughts, Justin and Woodsider. Of course, smash the likes. Leave your thoughts. What do you think about these things? What do you think about Team A versus Team B? What do you think about Obama? And we should spell that O-B-O-M-B-A. Obama getting another Human Rights Award for peace. The absurdity of that. I don't even know where to go with this. I do want to talk about some foolish quotes of the week, and this might be fun. People who leave things that I think are just absurd. First, I want to start with, wow, I'm getting all kinds of pop-ups coming here. I want to start with this this meme that I shared on Facebook talking about the whole social media strategy. And I had said, look, I don't need social media to protect me from reading things that might be offensive to me, and I don't need government to protect me from YouTube, Facebook, or myself. The point is, Facebook isn't protecting me by making sure that I don't see fake news or scary or dangerous conversations. The State Department wasn't protecting me by blocking, and the federal courts now aren't protecting me by trying to block the release of 3D printable gun blueprints. That doesn't protect me. And the people who are calling, and I saw a Republican, I think it was Chuck Grassley, calling for, and this, maybe this is the big switch. I saw him calling for social media giants to be regulated by like public utility. So no, I don't need government to come in and fix the problem that is social media over censoring people of their ability to share their voice. No, I don't need that. What we need is free market, the free market. So the comment that I thought was funny on this guy John says, you know, in response to my quote, he says, this is good because government had nothing to do with Facebook's, among other, decision to not distribute hate speech. And I think John is actually uninformed because Facebook has been getting pressure from politicians for some time over the last year. Oh, social media is the only reason. Russian meddling is what we're told is the reason that Trump is in office. If it wasn't for Russian meddling, Hillary Clinton would be president. And the logical conclusion of that is the Russian meddling happened through ad campaigns and social media strategies through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and elsewhere. And without that pressure about that, and it's not just government. There's a lot of people in the grassroots who really believe this, or in the general public. I wouldn't necessarily call these grassroots activists, but the general public really believes that social media, people aren't free to make their own choice about who they want to vote for, if it's lesser evil A versus lesser evil B, and somehow all their minds are being manipulated by social media. Justin says, yuck, don't say Hillary and president in the same sentence. It causes an involuntary reaction. True. You know, the morning after, or actually it was overnight, I was sending out a fundraising mailer right after that election. I was like ready with a folding machine and a printer. I had a kind of a control center set up in the living room, and I was ready to print out, and I'm watching this thing, and the results are coming in, and my jaw is on the floor like, holy crap, this guy's gonna win. And so I had to change the letter because I had expected Hillary to win. I had expected her. I actually thought during the primaries Trump was going to get the nomination. I had told some friends that he would automatically lose. I thought he was kind of the shoe-in to make sure that Hillary got there. But little did I know, I'm not a fan of Trump at all, but the man is skilled at getting people behind him. And he won. So, and he won fair and square. So, and it wasn't Russian meddling either, right? But so I had started this letter, and Justin, you may find this interesting. I started this letter and I said, oh, I'm grateful that I'm not writing the, oh, Hillary won, Hillary's the winner letter. I'm thankful that that didn't happen. So, yeah, I agree. The idea, and well, she definitely lost. So this idea that government isn't involved in this, according to what John says, is pretty absurd because the grassroots has been pressuring on this, the general public, the masses, the government-approved mainstream media on television has been pushing this message. And then, of course, there's hearings. And then, as I talked about on Wednesday's show, you can go back and look in the archives here on YouTube, I was talking about how there was an Intercept report from Glenn Greenwald that was talking about how there are some provable instances where pages are getting removed from Facebook, at very least, under direct order from government. So I think there's, even if this is a voluntary thing and it's a popularity contest from Spotify to Facebook to Apple, YouTube, LinkedIn, MailChimp, I mean, some of the most crazy ones that have just decided to kick Jones off their channels, even if it was just kind of groupthink amongst these businesses, I do think that there is a cloud of government pressure on this. Like, do this or we're going to come in, and we're going to do it for you. So I think that's really what's happening. That's only my gut opinion on it, but I think if you're not considering that and then considering the fact, as reported in The Intercept, that government has pressured some pages off through a directive, or they're under legal obligation. I think the Facebook representative said we were under a legal obligation. They had to remove the page of a mass murderer, not because the person was a mass murderer, This is ahead of some, I think, Serbia. I forget what country. It's the head of a dictator. They removed his page not because he's a mass murderer, but because the federal government put him on a list, and the list makes it their legal obligation to remove his page. So I'm getting texts from my lovely partner, Sarah. So I should really, we're live. This is kind of the juiciness of going live. Anyway, so that's one comment I want to get to. Another one is this one here. We put up a video again, this less Democrat, less Republican, more Constitution. And in response to this video, Matt Clearman over on Twitter says, you guys are actually promoting a non-democratic position. He's if you look at his profile, he's a Make America Great Again type of guy. He's a Trump supporter. And he's telling us that by not being in favor of one political party or the other, and that our view is that we want more Constitution, he's suggesting that, oh, okay, wow, you guys are anti-democratic. Well, if that's what you want to define it as, then certainly the whole country is set up as a republic. And certainly the founders, we can get into some details, maybe I can pull out a paper and discuss this in a future episode, but the founders recognize that the Republican form of government could be exercised locally through referendums, for example, but that a democratic process for the entire country was not a good idea. And this Federalist 10 is the most famous Federalist paper on this. But certainly the Electoral College is all about making sure it is not one person, one vote type of thing. So it's a majority controlled by the heavy population centers. I live in one of these heavy population centers. I live in Southern California in the middle of Los Angeles, one of the biggest cities in the hemisphere. And I don't want my neighbors or myself to have control over policy of everybody else. It's a bad choice. It's dangerous. Yeah, Justin says another list. And I talked about this, Justin, on the Wednesday show. I know you weren't able to make it for the live broadcast, but this is basically what I was talking about. We have all these watch lists, these you have a terrorist watch list, you have the TSA Quiet Skies program, and how they put you on these lists is so crazy. Like at the airport, if you're looking kind of shifty or you're nervous, maybe you're sweaty and you give a deep stare, I think one of their criteria is, then you're going to end up on this watch list. Not necessarily a no-fly, no-buy list, but you may be watched. And the watch lists are what are dangerous. So if they can put you on a list and then someone in the future says this list is filled with potentially dangerous criminals, and then Facebook at some point says, well, we can't have potentially dangerous criminals spewing hate speech, then there is clearly a line between government and social media. So that's really all I had to cover today. I'll probably get back with some more kind of in-depth news and coverage on Monday. I really actually enjoyed kind of talking about these things, kind of just a little bit off the cuff, responding to some feedback. I'm definitely interested in what you have to say, whether it's an awesome comment or what I would think is silly, you think I'm dumb, whatever. Post it in the comments, either here live or in the archives. Tweet at us at 10th Amendment, all spelled out. And, of course, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a really good weekend. Oh, wait, I forgot to do the quote of the day. It's not ready for have a good weekend. Real quick, another one from Thomas Jefferson. Some advice. Commerce with all nations, alliance with none should be our motto. And with that, let's round it out. I hope you have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to take a little bit of time off and actually relax a little bit this weekend, but I'll be back hard at work on Monday morning. We'll be back here at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you so much for watching Good Morning America. Good Morning America. Good Morning Liberty. It's Friday. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.